Okay, so we're going to start out first with basically what I want to do is 5 years ago, CitizenCon 2017, Austin, they share the Pioneer, a base building ship. 2023, they share their plans for base building. Very different from what we heard back then. So let's go all the way back in time and see what they said then, maybe compare it a little bit to what we have now, and then see kind of how the Pioneer changed. Because I think the Pioneer is going to change drastically out of all this stuff, okay? And I think that that'll be pretty cool and just, something to do for today. But I think the Pioneer commercial kind of shows what their thought process was then. But based on everything else, I think it's gonna have to change pretty significantly. So. Put myself back where I normally go.
Stars. They've become such a familiar backdrop of our day-to-day life that it's easy to forget what they mean. That one. That little dot right there.
Look at it.
That's Bremen.
Okay.
This one over here, that's Saul. Think about that. Just
Damn.
a handful of these dots represents the breadth of human expansion. Another handful, and you've got Bannon, Jean.
Yeah, this is if Matthew McConaughey and Elon Musk had a kid.
Even Van Duel systems.
Jean.
That's everything we've ever known.
That's how we say it then.
Every piece of art, every life, ever, right there.
Jean.
In two handfuls of dots. And that means there's so much more to find. Behind every one of those points of light is a story waiting to be discovered. Now, in our distant past, it was the province of governments to explore and understand space.
Yo, this commercial was nuts.
Simple launch took resources and money beyond the capacity of even the largest companies. But then RSI introduced the Zeus. And suddenly regular people were able to explore our solar system, allowing an unprecedented amount of knowledge to be discovered. When Nick Croshaw discovered the first jump point, the modified scanner array that allowed him to search for jump points were far too expensive for the civilian.
Yep, CitizenCon 2947. Yep, we just had CitizenCon 2953.
Market.
Yep.
But once that technology was refined and open to the public, what happened? That's right, an era of expansion that led us from this to this. And that's how it's always been. If you look at all the great eras of human history, whenever innovation has put technology in the hands of the people, it has heralded sweeping discoveries. Because power in the hands of many will always exceed the power of few. So while we can now discover new jump points and systems, there's still one hurdle that remains. That's what to do once you discover a new planet. Because right now, only the largest corporations can terraform and establish settlements.
Disgusting.
Easy.
Yeah.
We haven't simplified terraforming yet. No, I'm here to announce something equally exciting. Albert Einstein, the man who redefined human understanding of the universe, he once said, "The person who follows the crowd will usually go no further than the crowd. The person who walks alone is likely to find himself in places no one has ever seen before." An insightful sentiment meant to inspire thinkers and creators to push the boundaries of their understanding.
Why is this so
It
long?
was, after all, said 1,000 years ago, before humanity had left our homeworld. So clearly he was speaking metaphorically. Today, as I just showed you,
Get to the point, bro.
the unknown is out there, waiting to be discovered. For those that are looking for those places that no one has seen before, they are faced with a daunting challenge.
What does this guy have? A sponsor he's got to get to, but he's got to stream his, for a little while before he gets the sponsor?
What do you do when you get there? Up until now, it's been the province of governments and corporations to pave the way for sustained habitation.
Stalling streamer.
The power has been in the hands of the few. What if I offered you the ability to build your own settlement? To bring civilization to the most untamed of frontiers? A colony ship in the truest sense of the word. And I'm not talking about just transporting people, no. I'm talking about an all-in-one solution designed to build modular structures based on your needs. Capable of building a farm or a habitat, a trading post or a mining operation. I mean,
Do you see that? That refinery looks like pretty damn similar to what we currently have.
Crazy, right? Allow me to introduce the pioneer.
Bro, I swiped so fucking hard. This is the only time that I ever F5'd in the history of this game. I was like this. I was on a laptop at Prox's house, spamming F5 with my credit card information in his kitchen. That's the only time I ever did this, was for this ship. I got one, yeah.
With that, let the new age of colonization begin.
All right, so that's the commercial, okay? Pretty crazy. And then we have the actual, this is probably going to be scuffed as hell, but the CitizenCon discussion around the ship and what it can do, what it can't do, their design at the current time versus the design that we have now. How similar will they be? How different will they be? I don't remember. Do you guys? Some of you might. But I can only imagine the audio is going to be awful. Wait, no way are we watching this again? I didn't know it was at the beginning, guys. I'm sorry. Okay, I didn't know. I'm sorry. We would have just watched
if you're interested
that video.
It's going to talk about the aesthetics, the technical design, and how it actually functions in game. So, without further ado, I have Todd Pappy, our Star Citizen Live director from the German office.
Okay, same guy who talked to us about base building. So that's pretty good. Good start. It's been his thing, I guess.
John Crew, lead technical designer from the UK office.
So this is before John actually got a promotion. He was just a tech designer, just focused on ships.
Mr. Paul Jones, art director from the UK office.
Paul Jones went out for cigarettes and never came back this year.
And Mr. Tony Z, director of Persistent Universe out of Austin.
2 rip bozos.
It's up to you guys.
Last appearance.
Hello.
Yep.
So we're here to talk about the Pioneer and other things that are associated with it. So
this is going to be
right,
good.
We'll get into it. So like Brian said.
Holy shit, Tony Z is real. Listen. Very far away. This was very far away. This was in 2017. Tony Zervik, Star Citizen honcho. Todd Pappy, live honcho. Paul Jones, artsy honcho. John Crew, tech honcho. Okay.
We've got artsy honcho, we've got SC honcho, we've got live honcho and tech honcho.
We got honchos.
All right, so staking your claim. So the idea behind this is kind of the land settlements that happened in the States in 1889. And
Honcho
with
is
this
like
ship,
leader.
It is built to go and settle unknown lands. So before we even thought about this, before we even got into it, there was a couple of prerequisites that we felt needed to be done. First one being procedural planets that you guys have seen. Now, obviously, that creates a huge, massive play area that we need to fill with gameplay, and in essence, we're letting you guys fill it. Then the other thing...
Does anybody recognize anybody? All of these people stopped backing. None of these people play the game anymore.
Is that we needed to establish the two ends of the spectrum. So we've got cities...
Yeah, that was the refunds Reddit.
That you guys have seen with Area 18. And then we've got outposts. And then in the middle, we've got villages, which we'll introduce later. But now that we have outposts, that's basically our campsites. And then procedural building tech. And I think that you guys have seen some of that stuff, and then I'm sure that we'll show you more in the future. So where this ship fits into the game is a mid to long-term ship. It's for building and placing outposts. And like Brian said, we'll go into more detail about it on this panel. And then
mid to long-term ship in 2017.
In the thought process behind...
Yeah, $850 was the original price for the ship. It was an insane purchase.
Behind it is that this is for orgs or for a single player that wants to run AI. Okay.
So I'll quickly talk about the normal process of ship design that we do. We've talked on ATV lots about it. If you've grabbed me around the building, I've talked to you about it. It's usually a pretty linear
Turning
process.
him up.
So we get a super simple design brief from a director. Like we get Chris, Ben Lesnick, Todd, Tony. They go, I want this ship to do this. And then we go away, the tech design department, and we expand that to a one-page design brief to make sure we've interpreted what they want correctly. That is high-level stats, so rough dimensions, rough armament, rough speed, rough size. We have a kickoff meeting based around that with all the directors. They give their buy-in. Then we go away and we do a super simple white box in Engine just to block out the shapes, because it's one thing saying we want a ship to be 50 meters and we want it to do X, Y, Z, but if you can't actually fit those three things in it, there's no point it being 50 meters. So then we quickly validate that. It's either made from solids or we use existing assets from existing ships and just smash them together, which Paul loves to see. Well, it's lovely work, just crushed together. That gets signed off. It goes into concept and tech design go hand in hand, just constantly iterating, gets signed off, and then when it's all signed off, use it. So for the Pioneer, we did it slightly differently. So we had the high-level design brief. We want to have a...
So they have not been working on this ship. They have not been working on this design. So 2017 comes. They probably did their rough idea of how they wanted to do it. They sold you an $850 ship, approximately. I don't remember Warbond versus what. And then that was it. They went on and started doing other things, right? So they don't work on these things the entire time after they communicate them to you. They sell them to you, and then they put them on the shelf. And then they find more things to sell to you. And then, in the meantime, trickle out some of the things that they put on the shelf to you. And then sometimes they'll do what they did at CitizenCon, where they update you on this specifically and then tell you that we haven't even started development on it. We're going to start early next year. And then they say that you'll have all these things within 12 months or so, which you obviously know with this specific thing is probably not going to be the case, right? But it's still worth it to be excited about because it's a very cool feature, a very good thing, and I think it'll make the game a lot better, but I think it'll take a little longer than what they're making it seem like, right?
That creates outposts. So, well, okay, that's quite a big bit of gameplay. So we don't know how we're going to do that, or we didn't know how we were going to do that at the time. And then the other really interesting part was we want it to be consolidated Outlands, which we have the Mustang. And
they don't have that style.
Extrapolate that up to the huge scale. It's like, well, all the other manufacturers, we know what little ships look like, big ships. We can't just take a Mustang and go.
What's the biggest consolidated
ridiculous.
Outland ship? The Nomad
So,
right now?
Well, we could try.
So what we did first, we talked with Nathan Dearsley and Paul. We didn't do a white box for it, which is quite an unusual process. They went away and did all mood boards, concepts of what they want consolidated Outlands to look like, which Paul will show you some of the early stuff. Because this was
before the rework of all the Mustangs, I assume. And then they decided on the style that they like and then applied that to the Mustangs later. Is that what happened here? Or did the new Mustangs come out since then? I can't remember. But I'll always remember the old Mustang beta versus the new Mustang beta and how bad the beta is. The beta is literally beta now.
Very clear from that.
I like how the Mustangs look,
no
except for the beta to the new beta. You know,
if the ship's going to be around.
That was the only one that missed.
Work. So we got those back, and you can see the round and round bit in the middle, where we got the concept. Chris liked it, signed it off, did a white box, went with art. I was like, no, that doesn't work. Round and round we go till everyone was happy, signed off, and that was that.
Okay.
So some quick ship stats. The new ship matrix went live last night.
Cargo capacity 600. No shot. No shot anymore. This thing is going to be so much bigger than that.
At some point?
Maybe not, but I imagine it will, because it's going to build stuff. So you'll have 600 in cargo capacity, and then you use it, and then you put 600 more, and then you use it and put 600 more maybe. But we'll see.
So we've gone through every ship in the game and updated all their stats to the best that we know of. And we're going to keep that more up to date. It's a much simpler process now. Anything you see up there with a dash is because we don't know where it's fully going to be. We'd rather give you the numbers when they're not going to change rather than what we have in the past. It's like this. Everyone sits on it for 3 years and goes, why is it not like that anymore? We'll give you it when we have some solid numbers. But
guys,
the numbers we do have there are the ones we do know about. So
he said 3 years. We should have it in 2020.
It's 200 meters long, which is quite big.
Can't wait to fly it.
It's a capital size ship, which if you've read all the shipyard posts we've been doing over the last 2 weeks, explains that. It's got 600 SEU of cargo, which is used for...
You know what's really funny, actually? The shipyard posts that they've been doing over the last few weeks, this is actually so interesting and such a fun thing to share with you guys. This was the last time they shared design documents. Was in 2017, I guess. Because when they were doing all those shipyard posts and sharing, the 100i fuel systems and the mining design and the salvage designs and those things, that was the last time that they were really open and truly open with us until last week. Until last weekend.
Building the bases.
It took that long to open back up again and be really open about things.
Supports 8 living on it, so you can just about get by doing 4. So it is a team effort to do this stuff. On the next bit is the more detailed breakdown. And this actually didn't change much from the initial brief that we did. Things like thrusters always change as we build the ships out and work out where the best place for them was. And the only
everything
bit
here
that
changes.
actually changed was the turrets. So we went from having 4-man turrets to having 2-man turrets and 2 unmanned turrets. And that was, as we were going over the shapes, obviously to get to to use a manned turret, you need to get a man to that turret, which in itself creates restrictions on sizes and shapes.
How much does the team
By
Grunson
taking that
send?
out of the equation, you can have much more
Significantly.
interesting shapes and feel, and the person controlling that turret is just sat somewhere in a nice central location to use it. So yeah, that hopefully you can all see on the website now. and look in more detail at it.
Well,
You're going to trust me with the clicker? All right, let's go. So this is the art side of the talk. This is a pretty good question to ask. Obviously, John's explained sort of the initial part of the process. It's, you know, the ship's, it's pretty different.
Dude, we're all waiting. The moment it gets here, look, this was the first 3 people talking. Look at how long the video is. The first 3 people talking is going to be about half the video. The moment this man talks by himself, half the video.
What we've had to deal with before. It's been dealt with
It's
generally
going to be glorious.
By one of the concept team in the UK. And he's done very well to remain sane throughout this process. So it has been very challenging, but what I'm going to give you now is a sort of high-level process of how we've approached this ship, a little bit of sort of behind the scenes, and then sort of more of an explanation of where we've arrived, how we've arrived.
So this is kind of the stuff that
hopefully
is
you
not
guys will
as
really
important
like
to
it.
like what we're
So this is my
to like what we're hearing now. But if we want to take a look at the ship and see how they designed it visually versus, you know, the shapes that even just the shapes that we saw them show at CitizenCon this year, they were very round. They were tall. It was giving 3D printing vibes rather than, you know, structural, like Lego manufacturing or something, like, you know?
My favorite new buzzword that I came up with specifically for this talk. So I think these 3 lines basically describe how we sort of approach this ship. And especially with this ship.
That's the word I was looking for. Prefabs, which is, we'll hear more about that in a little bit.
We basically, it was kind of different to the other ships in the past. So basically this one was very clear. You know, it was utilitarian.
Aaron was at
basically
CitizenCon.
monolithic manufacturing. It's basically, you've got a huge brick of a ship, essentially. But obviously that doesn't look cool. So, you know, we go through various stages to make this look good. So
Wait, did he just say
throughout the
function
whole
over form?
process and throughout the
No
sort of whole
shot.
design philosophy of the ship, it's basically an asymmetrical design. So you'll see on the exterior it's asymmetrical. The bridge is asymmetrical. It's cantilevered. The corridors are asymmetrical, and this throws. It's basically in the DNA of this ship. And you know, John has mentioned previously that obviously we've had the Mustang, which is one of our, I guess, really early ships from Consolidated Outlands, and not really a lot of work had been done in terms of the style guide. And really they're more of a separate division. So this is more of your industrial division. So it's kind of like the Reclaimer, which is like the industrial Aegis.
Bro, give more industrial ships. Gib. But again, I've spoken about this before. I don't want them to make industrial ships until they have the industrial design figured out. And a lot of that stuff they don't have figured out. Very similarly, how we discussed yesterday about the economy, how they don't want to make the simulation without the gameplay first. They could simulate the gameplay when they know what the gameplay is. I don't want them to design the ships we're working in until they know what the gameplay is. Because then those designs are going to be like seamless and smooth and like frictionless fun. You know, if they put friction in, it's like progression or you know, skill or whatever. Like it's not friction because we didn't know that this was going to be like this, which is the kind of friction that we have now, which totally sucks.
So right off the bat, you know that you're dealing with function over form. It's not going to be like super sexy. It's not going to be pretty, but it's still going to have a really good sort of well thought out industrial.
I don't know about you guys, but this ship is one of the prettiest ships I've ever seen in the game. So I don't know what he's talking about. To me, this thing was pretty from the start.
Design feel.
I loved everything about this
even,
thing.
Even as you're walking through this thing, you're still going to appreciate
Show pick.
it.
They're about to. I scrolled ahead. I pre-watched.
Flying factory. So this next slide, this
There you
basically
go.
sort of shows the sort of initial development. So what normally happens is that we always provide Chris with a series of options. He always, if we give him one, he's never happy. He wants to see 3, 4. The more he can see, the more options, the better. Which is great. We're totally used to it.
Never happy.
We
Yeah,
know
we
how
know.
to work fast. That's you don't really sort of set your heart on anything, but you keep pushing for what you like, ideally. So we provide Chris with all these options of how this ship.
Designing ships has to be fun, honestly. Absolutely. That's why, I didn't give Morph a big hard time about going to Star Atlas. What a fucking cool opportunity, right? Obviously, Star Atlas has its problems, but being able to go there and design ships sounds like a dream to a lot of us after following this project for so long.
Can look good, but also, not be a flying brick. So basically, there's a lot of transformation. We still have technical issues, well, not technical issues, technical requirements that we need to take into account with this.
Which one's your favorite? I think H is mine, for sure, and I think that's sort of the direction that they went in. I also like I. I's pretty crazy. You can't really see G. G's pretty cool. Let me move myself for you guys. You're a J enjoyer? Individual floating shield generators create protective barrier. Actually, J's pretty sick. E is really cool, too. I think they went with E more. I think they did a combination of H and E. But, yeah. And this one looks more like the repair ship. What's the name of that one? It begins with a C, I think.
But at this stage, we hand this off to Chris, and he's
Crucible,
able to
yeah.
give us feedback. He's able to pick from A, pick from B, say, I like the color from J, and then basically we go on to the next round of feedback.
Can't wait to own this and
so
wait
this
a
is
year. Yeah, dude, I said the same thing in 2017. Enjoy your wait.
We start sort of dialing in. We've taken what Chris likes. And again, it's just super loose, super
just
rough.
make sure you hold the line.
We are dealing with mesh work that we're just sort of crashing together. We're not being all precious about this stuff. So we're basically just going for an aesthetic with a hint of the functionality. That's already sort of been factored in with talks with design. And what you'll see here is in a sort of really, we've got the next few slides are very sort of behind the scenes.
Oh yeah, dude. This is when I started getting super hyped up, because then you start this is what they do. They start dreaming, making you dream in your head on how everything's gonna work. And I'm this is when I get all right, so here's what we're gonna do. All right, me and the boys, I'm gonna be flying this, and then the boys are gonna come and they're gonna refill the cargo, and I'm going to make a base, and it's going to be crazy. And then, someone's going to be over here on the crow's nest pointing at where I'm, giving me directions on where to place things. All right, a little to the left, a little to the right.
Sort of the stuff that...
and then 6 years later...
people's desks, and people are drawing on their Wacoms.
I'm still dreaming.
You can tell this is an early one because this is actually flipped the other way. But you can see really early on that...
I don't, Gabriel.
That
no.
we dialed in to what we wanted for this ship. So you've got the bridge. It's very much like the bridge of an
You'll be
oil
my base
tanker.
pitch void, dude.
You're overlooking your ship. It's good visibility. You can see your whole manufacturing process. And
yes, this is a underutilized emote, guys. We have a new emote that you guys haven't been using very much. It's called Let Him Cope. Let him cope, okay?
Basics, turrets,
leave me alone,
and how this is going to work. And again, these are really apologies for the sort of small resolution, but here you can it gives you an indication of the block out process in terms of the animation and the manufacturing process. So this is not a 3D printer. It is a manufacturing plant.
All right, so do you hear that? This is not a 3D printer. This is a manufacturing plant. What we saw and what we can imagine now in the future is that has probably completely been thrown out. There's no chance that this is going, well, not no chance, but it does sound like they're changing that direction to be more of a 3D printer with this tiered system of, you'll have a very small vehicle that manufactures, you'll have, I'm sorry, what were the steps? Were there 2 vehicles and 2 ships, right? Because there were 4 steps. You had a very small vehicle, then you had like the trailer, and then you had the Galaxy, and then you had the Pioneer. So it was 4 things. I can't see how that will be these modular prefab systems anymore. Maybe, but just the way that they displayed everything is that this is going to change significantly, and we'll go to more of like a 3D, like laser printed system. Like, yeah, you got to put all this stuff together. You're going to do some things in a UI. You're going to press a button and the shit's going to appear. Is probably my guess. Especially everything we know about Rastar and like a third person look at things. It just sounds like this idea was way too pie in the sky, and I mean, I think at this point, many of us would agree with that. I mean, let me know, but I'm pretty sure this idea is insane. Because how do you have the level of variety people would want when, you're kind of stuck with things being pretty square, with the shape of everything here?
So you're essentially, you'll be taking your panels, materials, almost like IKEA, dare we say?
I would say more like a car manufacturer or something
Right,
like that.
so more like Tesla, let's say.
Yeah.
I prefer Tesla, and it definitely suits more with the sort of the video you guys have just seen.
Back when people weren't talking Elon
that the concept
all the
artist is
time.
putting in for the manufacturing plant. And basically you've got 2 arms, and that's basically where everything gets built, and then in the center it all gets assembled. There's a little bit of magic that goes on in there, and then basically the crane comes in and takes your pods.
Like, I see what Lethality is saying. In some ways, it never really made sense to need a ship that did this, even less so with the 3D printing concept. So it'll be interesting to see, like, look at this thing. It's massive. So what is happening in here, right? What happens in here? How much will this change is what I'm super curious about. Because with what they showed in the shape of everything and how tall things were, everything seems so different from what they showed here. So what happens on the inside of this ship? This is one of the few ships that might actually get smaller, right? This ship legitimately might get smaller in comparison to all the other ones if they go the 3D printing route. What do you think? I don't know, man. I can't wait. But in reality, if it was like this big modular, like place something down, bang, on the ground, you would think it would have had to get bigger. But the more and more they show, the more and more you think the way things are going to work, there's no shot that it's going to do this, we build it on the ship and then place it down kind of thing. Everything is pointing towards going away from that direction.
So this is a, I guess, final concept model. So we're jumping right ahead.
It's beautiful, though. I don't want them to change it very much.
It's starting to articulate. This is once you've landed and found a suitable landing site. You've got an arm that's articulating out.
Right, and he said this is once you've landed. So this is all done on the ground. I imagine this is all going to be done while floating in the air at this point.
There is a turret on this arm, and it's also sort of providing an extra...
Right, look at it. It is basically a 3D printer on the inside that places it down, right? Capital and Atmos, sure. I mean, look at the VTOLs, so it's possible.
Sense of perimeter to your base. The area in blue is essentially the crane, and once everything has been assembled, this crane comes in.
Oh my God. I never realized the scale that they were talking about with this ship. That's an entire outpost building. So maybe the process is still the direction they want to go. That is big, big. That is big, big. Yeah, they said this thing's a capital ship. I get that, but so's an 890 jump. Right? Like, this is Idris big. So maybe that idea is still a reality, but I'm still leaning towards everything in this center section is probably going to look different than what we see today. But we'll see.
The habitation
Holy
pods,
crap.
Out of there, moves it to the front of the ship so that then there's still space for additional pods. And depending
That
on
doesn't look to scale. I mean, it's 2017. It probably isn't. You know what I mean?
how you've configured it. And then, again, this is kind of just sort of showing you the process of where...
What's happening today? Let me know. Type 1 in chat if you guys want to quickly kind of watch the video, not the whole discussion, but the video of the base building today, just so you can get a sense of what we saw here to what they shared today and sort of how they wanted to at least communicate it visually.
Cargo is
all right,
inserted,
we'll do it.
And it runs down both arms, ultimately meets in the middle. And you know, as a player, you'll be able to see a ton of this going on. You'll have all the equipment. You'll have you'll have all the robot arms. It'll you know, as you're playing it or as you're walking around your base, you should really get a good feel of what's going on.
I think we're all excited for bases. We're absolutely all excited for bases. How are they going to be? I'm still clueless, right?
Swiftly moving on. This is just some quick outlines, just sort of outlining
God, it's
top
so
view,
good
basically,
looking.
of the bridge. Again, asymmetrical feel, cantilever.
Look at the landing pad. It's so pretty, dude.
Design. Inside there you have habitation, which we'll see examples of after this.
I want a cargo ship that looks like this. I want a CO cargo ship that moves whole sea levels of cargo. Like, remove this area and just put cargo capacity here. Like, basically like the thing that we saw in the Squadron 42 demo. Yeah, it's kind of like that Squadron 42 trailer ship. Just remove this intersection and allow me to move cargo in this section.
This is quite a large ship. Additional cargo space, as well as a landing pad, which is above further cargo space.
Did you notice there's a part in the I Held the Line video that you see a Pioneer? Really?
Staging area, this is where all your robots are. This is where everything is getting sort of
robots,
built, essentially, from your materials. And then manufacturing is where all the magic happens. Moving on.
This is the internals
some
now.
of the final images that basically have been built for this ship.
Look at the scale. Whoever said this is not to scale, I mean, listen, these are just images, but look at this. This is literally like Bountiful Harvest on the inside of the ship.
So you can see the habitation pod there already. And you can see there's walkways in there, so as a player, you'll be able to come out.
This thing's a planet.
I guess if you're in a nice, calm situation, you'll be able to come out and see.
Mike still buying concept art? No, I'm pointing out how ridiculously insane this is and how unrealistic this is. Right? I'm not buying this. I'm doing the opposite of buying this.
All your cool equipment.
Well, I bought it,
if you're in a combat situation, hopefully you'll have more, you know, a good advantage or possibly disadvantage for firefights, depending on if you have people taking over your base. And then this is the bridge.
The bridge is sick.
And this is pretty cool. You can see on the sort of far left-hand side.
These are the things, though. Look at this bridge. Like, what is the point of this outside of just straight sci-fi? You know what I mean? Like, Function over form. Nothing about this bridge says function over form to me.
There's a little blue monitor. Actually looks quite small, but that's actually the architect's station.
This is
So
just
that's-
pure
that's
selling
the
you
console,
sci-fi
basically, where
goodness.
you're designing your configuration, I guess. So you're choosing 1 pod, 2 pod, 5 pods.
I just joined. What are you looking at? For the people who did just join, we're going all the way back to 2017 and watching the original pitch for base building. So this is the ship that was supposed to be the only ship that did base building up to this point, and the pitch, and seeing what likely will change and has changed from that point to this point. So just catching you guys up.
Moving on, rather cool engine room. Basically this will be a large open space. Again, asymmetrical from the top. You've got some really interesting turbines that should give us some really cool animation opportunities. And it's very different to anything that we've seen so far.
UB Devoid, 2015 was the first time.
Obviously, you've got space for a couple of Big Bennies. Everybody wants Big Bennies in their ship.
The Big Bennies beam.
And then split level room. So,
okay. I want a ship that looks like this. This is very Argo feel, right? This is actually sick. So the thing that still sells me on spaceships art-wise, the only thing that sells me on spaceships art-wise still is the habitation and living areas of the ships. The habitation and living areas of the ships still sell me like crazy, because that's where it's like, I don't know why it does this to me, but it makes it feel, it always sells me as like a ship that I want. The thing that I've always wanted out of Star Citizen is to live on a ship and never feel like I have to leave it. And when they do really, really good, like kitchen or habitation or whatever areas, and not like 890 Jump, like very luxurious style, but the more, I think my favorite one still is the Argo Mole. That's what sells me, right? Hull A is okay. Hull C, after Morph's video, not so much. I think my favorite one is still the Mole, then probably Carrick. I don't remember what the RAF looks like. The original Mustang Beta, right? Even the Nomad's not bad. I don't know what else, but there's not a lot of ships that really have sold that to me. Origin ships do a good job, but I don't like the luxury style personally, so that's never really worked for me. But a lot of Origin ships sell that to the player. The Caterpillar, yes, the Caterpillar's not too bad. Maybe a little bit of MSR, yeah, MSR not. That was my biggest disappointment with the C2. Actually, was I thought that they did that really poorly. The center space was just so wasted, it felt like to me. But yeah, this is what sells me on these things. But enough of that. We're missing the point here.
Chilling out, just watching
I love
TV,
that shit though.
or just having dinner with your friends. Bunk room, again, very utilitarian.
No, the E1 won't do it. It's a transport ship.
Very basic, down to basics. You could, if you look closely, you can see one crew member in one of the pods.
I don't like this though.
Just lying down. And this is just a quick.
Okay, so if they maintain this style, we can build a Caterpillar in this ship, right? Because they talked about building ships. Like, let's remember too now, this thing isn't just going to build bases anymore. If they're going to do what they say with the blueprints, this thing's going to make ships as well, I think. And I know, let me cope, okay? And I know that's incredibly ridiculous, but that they're opening the options there, okay?
A quick slide put together.
crazy.
Just to give you an indication of comparative sizes, again, you've got a little Mustang in there,
Now it needs
which
a
will
shipyard
fit
for
on
that.
the landing
Maybe for certain size ships. Maybe this thing will make Mustangs or
pad.
something.
And finishing up, this is sort of final rendering of just showing the ship in its full glory. And it's still, even though it is utilitarian and
It's
sort of
beautiful.
quite big and massive, monolithic.
The
Again, with this
final
sort of
render,
graphical
guys.
branding, it's kind of still giving it. We've broken up the shapes. We've given it a really sort of futuristic feel, and I'm pretty happy with it. Yeah.
What's the point of manufacturers then if anyone could build its own ship? For style.
Click. Yeah. So I'm now going to hand over to Tony.
Here we go.
So before you can actually begin construction of your new outpost, you'll need to first select and purchase a plot.
All right, guys. This is where we take everything with the biggest grain of salt. Okay? He is about to go off.
Of land. The value of that land, what you're going to have to pay in order to acquire it, depends upon a variety of objective criteria, as well as the seller's insight into that information, which we collectively refer to as knowledge. One of the
I'm already done. Already, this is it. Already is insane.
things that we track.
You're going to purchase land. The value of that land is determined by 47,000 things that are going to be simulated in the background. That, guess what? In 2023, never happened, and is now on hold.
For each section of land that you can potentially purchase is the resources present and the quantity. Another one is the current market value, which will obviously impact the value of land. If the land has an abundance of a particular mineral that at that particular point in
Real
time
money or in game. They sold land claims for real money during this event and for quite a while after it. It was $50 for 5,000 by 5 kilometers by 5 kilometers. And I think it was 80 or 90 or something. I don't remember the price for the 8K by 8K. Yep. So I believe I have one land claim, and you get a free land claim when you buy the Pioneer. Free, baby. So I think I have 2 land claims.
Exceptionally valuable, then that's going to
I can't remember the price.
The current value of that land, but it's a very
it was
dynamic
free.
process.
That's like when my wife comes and well, my wife's never done this, but like the funny story of like the wife comes and she spent $2,000 on clothes and she said that she got 10% off.
The level of certainty,
and you're like, oh yeah,
that's
well,
interesting
thank God.
in that knowledge, information within Star Citizen is very often an analog concept. You don't necessarily know something or not know something, but rather you know things to varying degrees. And the easiest way that I could give for an example would be to consider a car that you're thinking about purchasing. If you're being asked to purchase a car and you haven't actually seen it, you're going to be very conservative in terms of your estimate of what it might be worth. If you're able to see it even from the exterior and verify there's tread on the wheels, the paint job looks okay, etc., then that's going to increase your perception of its value. If you're able to actually...
How did we not see this back then? We all saw this and we ate it up back then like crazy. When all he's saying is, I'm going to scan the land, and if there's something valuable there, then the land is more valuable. If there's quantanium on your land, it's more valuable than if there's copper on your land. Why is this why are we taking this super long route? It's funny.
Turn the car on.
We were
make sure
young and
it's
dumb
running.
back then. Some of us were. Some of us were old and dumb, but most of us were dumb.
or better yet, have a mechanic
Still are.
take a peek under the hood, then that's going to basically bring it even farther up the scale. And so a lot of what we're doing with the value of land, which ties over into the Pioneer, because you're going to be setting up these outposts ideally in optimal locations to exploit a lot of this value that's sitting on the surface of these planets. The next one up.
Okay, I mean, that's the first thing to point out, that's sitting on the surface of these planets. Whereas in the demo, we saw that we're now going to be exploiting what's below the surface of the planets in a very simple and very clean way, which is really, really good. I think that was, for me, that was probably one of the biggest takeaways, was that if you guys look all the way back at the original concept of the prospector actually had a laser that just pointed down into the ground and extracted ore randomly from the ground. And the biggest change from the concept of the prospector to how we actually mine today is we mine asteroids that are out in space, which is obvious. That was always going to happen. But very small ones that we break up and extract nearly all of them, right? All of the pieces. So we went from, and then we do the same thing on the surface of a planet, where back then we were all expecting to just shoot a laser into the ground and magically iron or whatever you happen to want to be extracting would just make it into your ship, which is a very simplistic, old school kind of MMO way of doing things, is press a button, sit back, watch Netflix. Well, mining is not a sit back and watch Netflix thing as much. I mean, maybe while you're scanning for something, but when you're actually mining, it's a very hands-on process. So that changed significantly. And it appears that the plan around that has changed a bit as well, because we are going to go below the surface, and that maybe, I mean, again, the visuals that they want to show there are obviously placeholder, and everything is subject to change when they actually start building it out this coming year, but their intentions are to go below the ground, and I love that.
Would be when the info was last verified. No.
I think he's explaining how they need to quantify this value in the context of quantum, for sure. I mean, at this time, he was Tonying all about quantum. That's all we were dealing with at that time. Now, who the fuck knows, right?
Knowing that there is, a vast abundance of gold at a particular area, but the information is stale. It's 2 weeks old. It's a month old. It's 6 weeks old. As it gets more out of date, it becomes less and less valuable. And so what this means is that players will routinely have to refresh, the knowledge of a particular area in order to maintain the perceived land value within the game.
This ideal of land value is very non-player economy sounding, right? Very exclusively to the simulation, exclusively you interacting with NPCs and selling it and buying it from them only.
Thing that I'd mentioned in regards to what constitutes knowledge is the value of location.
Weird.
If you've got a field of copper ore and it's in close proximity to a refinery, potentially at an outpost set up by one of these pioneers, then that ore field, the land that what you'd have to pay to actually purchase that land is going to rise in price. If on the other hand there's no refinery on that planet,
it sounds overcomplicated. It's because it is
basically
it's just overdoing a very, very simple system that players can determine the value of these things. But if we are going to do quantum, the AI also needs to be able to figure out the value of things. So it isn't that crazy for him to be saying what he's saying. He's just really long-winded about it, right? And they did say the quantum economy is on hold. They didn't say it's gone. They didn't say they're not going to do it, right? We talked about that yesterday. Everybody was doom and gloom. It doesn't really sound like it's a doom and gloom situation, but it does sound like they want to build out other things before they do it. And in reality, guys, what do we think Star Citizen's going to be? Because how I'm seeing my chat is the conversation appears to be all around entirely player-built economy or entirely, and the conversation from Tony feels like an entirely NPC-run economy, when in reality, the direction does sound a lot more like it's a combination of the two. And if it's a combination of the two, the AI does need to determine what they want to sell land for, right? Because there will just be, there will almost certainly be a marketplace where you might be purchasing land from the UEE. If I remember, it was like you're purchasing land from the UEE, or you put down a land claim. I can't remember. I think we just buy a land claim stake and you just place it down. So maybe we aren't buying land at all. I mean, I think that is the real solution, is that you don't buy land at all, because I don't know. I'm actually like losing my train of thought, because it gets really complicated when you mix AI into the situation, right? Because we going to be flying around on Daymar, let's say? You've ever flown around on Daymar, low flying, mining, rock mining, whatever? Completely empty, right? Are we just going to be flying around and come across a little random NPC outpost? I think the hope would be yes. But do you have the opportunity to buy that from them? Maybe, right? So it's very interesting on how all this might work, and it's crazy to think about. Really crazy to think about, right? So when you start thinking about how complicated this could get, it does sound like he's thinking about all the possible complications, all the edge cases, and he's discussing that with them. But the more you think about it, the more it gets complicated, right?
Carting the ore to another refinery and then getting it to its eventual destination, that's going to lower lower the perceived value of that plot of land. So knowledge within the game is a really fundamental concept.
I hope he can sell bases so someone can buy it, develop it, and then sell it. Yeah, I think we all do, but that's very much a player-run economy thing. Will NPCs do the same? And that's sort of what Tony is like all on right now. He's high on quantum, right? In this discussion, I think. And we just don't know how far they're going to take that on the NPC side. We know what we want. But will Star Citizen work with just us? And that's really the question that won't be answered for a few, maybe many years. But we'll have to see. We know what they want to do with us. They very much shared that point of view this year. But where will they go NPC-wise is very difficult to know. Hey, Noodle. Glad you're back and safe, man.
It's able to, knowledge is a concept that once...
Look at the amount of papers in front of each of them. 1 paper, 3 papers, 1 paper, Encyclopedia Britannica. Oh my God.
you've acquired it about a certain area or a certain object, you're able to transfer that to other friends, you're able to transfer that to organizations, you're able to sell that information to public information brokers, or freely submit it into the public domain.
Right, so it's just, this is very like insane, but it sounds like he's just
Tony talks about
checking edge
knowledge,
cases.
What it all means, but to get that knowledge, you've got to go and find that area to figure out what's there. Is it right for you? And that's where all the exploration ships come in.
So this is where they're selling exploration
you could take your
to
Pioneer and do all this with your Pioneer, but it's probably not going to be the best ship for scouting locations. We've got a whole wealth of exploration ships that are designed for finding that information out. It's like you wouldn't take your oil rig out into the ocean and just randomly dot it down until you found what you wanted. They send the scouts out to find the best locations. So the ships you mentioned there's just a small range of the
That's the
exploration
original
ships,
Carrack
like the
concept.
315P, Terrapin, Carrack.
On the right there.
All exploration, all have slightly different pros and strengths. So you've got the single ones, you've got the big crews, and they're just there to help find where you want to send your Pioneer to. You might find a nice location, but if you went there in your Pioneer, you're never going to find out where the nearest refinery, like Tony talked about. You could build it and you find it's millions of miles away, and that's going to be a waste. So these exploration
oil rigs
ships are
confirmed.
really
I mean, they kind of showed
key
them
to finding those places.
Yeah, and one of the things we're aiming to do is make sure that there's a lot of gameplay associated with these high-level concepts. And by
Lots
that
of
I
gameplay,
mean,
guys.
if you discover, if you're working your long-range scanners, you may find a previously unknown body, an asteroid that no one else within the system knows about, and there is a level of value related to that. If you work your dials a little bit and you've got the proper equipment and skills, then without actually having to make the journey, you could increase the potential value of that knowledge find by being able to discern, the mass of the object. A large asteroid is going to be, all things being equal, be worth more than a smaller asteroid.
This
But if you
concept
really
of
want to ratchet it up,
knowledge
and this kind of goes
like,
back to the
it's obviously very simple, but he's just getting a little crazy with it. It's like, yeah, we'll see the stats of things and we'll be able to share them.
Degrees of knowledge that I was talking about. If you actually make the journey to it, fly over, burn fuel, burn time, brave whatever dangers are between you and there, and you actually do a flyover the surface, then you may actually just visually see pools of hydrocarbons, gas venting from the surface, and again that raises up what you know about it all the more. If you really want to get specific about what's there and maximize the potential value of that find, though, then you're going to have to set down on the surface, and you're actually going to take core samples, and you're going to basically have these processed, analyzed, and you're going to do things like seismographic surveys and have et cetera,
See
et cetera.
how he says it?
And so
you're going to do, right? It's all these things you're going to do. And these are the things, like, this is the 2016, 2017 time where it was just like, whatever we say is possible. But then, since 2017, it was like, wait, once we actually get in game and try and do this, it's not fun. It's not possible. Whatever hurdles that they get into, and things changed, and people were like, "Yo, what the fuck? But you said," and then you have the other Andys that are like, "It's game development. Things are always subject to change, and so on." Right? But you want to believe when he says this is what you're going to be able to do. You want to believe that they had thought this out and thought if it was possible or not, right? And like prototyped it and thought if it was fun yet. But they just didn't care to do that stuff back then, and they just didn't do it.
all of this plays into a common theme that we're trying to execute upon, which
Meanwhile,
is
in reality, hold V to
all
survey.
of these
Exactly.
high-level ideas and stuff have a variety of different ways by which the player community can basically attack them, and by which these things will feed, the outputs of one into the inputs of another.
So now that Tony's kind of giving you a high-level idea of what land is and how we value it, I'm going to talk about actually claiming your land. So first and foremost,
Canine Dog,
claims
I don't
are
know what
not
that
tied
is,
to the Pioneer.
what you're talking about.
A single person organization can buy them, so on and so forth. Then we have the concept of UEE space, non-UEE space. If you settle in UEE space, you need...
Okay, I'm going to pause this and go back a little bit when he starts talking, because this is the concept that was then updated and shared this year.
The outputs of one into the inputs of another.
So now that Tony's kind of giving you a high-level idea of what land is and how we value it, I'm going to talk about actually claiming your land. So first and foremost, claims are not tied to the Pioneer. A single person organization can buy them, so on and so forth. Then we have the concept of UEE space, non-UEE space.
So it's just
if you settle in UEE space, you need to have a claim. If you're brave enough and you don't want to do it, you can venture out to non-UEE space, and then there you can find some of your shadier things that you want to do in the game.
It sounds to me like that concept has changed, potentially. So now we have 3 versions. You have what? High sec, low sec, no sec, or high sec, medium sec, low sec. I forgot the middle one, what it was called. But it still seems like we claim our things.
So if you do plant it in the UEE space, then the idea is that you get the protection
High-sec
from
low,
the UEE,
no, okay.
in case somebody comes and attacks you and stuff like that. It will be transferable between players. Like
Cool.
any good government, the UEE will actually take a cut of that in a title transfer cost. We're doing general licenses. Later on, the UEE will portion out licenses. So when it comes to actually claiming the beacon or claiming your lands, you'll have a beacon interaction. So you set down your beacon. This is where I want to go. And either yourself, one of your teammates, or a data runner will take this information to the closest UEE colony office, and basically that's when it locks in, and now that land is yours.
Yeah, so one of my favorite aspects about just the overall concept of land is actually...
Yeah, so, I mean, it was very like, you buy it from the UEE, or you do whatever. And I think it's kind of become a little bit more rigid. And I don't think there was any mention of buying it from the UEE in HiSec in the previous demo. Do you guys, in the demo this week, do you guys remember?
Speculation. And the basic idea is that assume that you've purchased land and you've gone out and you either bought it with foreknowledge that it likely contain these minerals, et cetera, or you discovered that yourself. And so now you're holding on to this land, and the decision you'll face is, well, do I basically extract that value right now? If whatever that land contains is currently in a bear market, it's not worth very much, then you may elect to basically wait to harvest whatever it holds until those particular commodities have price. And it sounds simple, but there's a lot of ripple effects to where we get really interesting knock-on gameplay effects. And by this I mean, when you own land, that doesn't prevent someone else.
Do we know if Tony's still part of the project? I mean, it says on his LinkedIn, so.
And extracting those resources. Now, obviously,
yes,
if you're doing this within UEE
presumably
space and you basically sit down and you're extracting resources from someone else's property, then that's a criminal offense, and basically the game's security system will deal with them as appropriate. But, of course, the police aren't patrolling, every square inch of every planet, every asteroid, every moon, every minute of the day. And so you holding onto that property, waiting for, a better payday in the future has...
Okay, and now that has changed pretty significantly. So to reiterate what we heard this week is in HiSec, you will be invulnerable. You'll have like a shield or some shit, and nobody can touch you. So those bases will be like your home. And then you have LowSec, which the UEE or somebody, local security, will defend you. And they will defend you increasingly more the more people try to attack you. You can also defend your own stuff. And then like with like turrets and shit, I guess. And then NoSec or NullSec, there will be no defense from NPCs. All the defense will be your own org and your own, passively placed defenses. So that's a little bit different than what he's saying here, because I think that they finally determined how they want to do these things, and that will be how it is. Will you still be invulnerable if you commit a crime and go hide inside your base? Edge cases that we'll know when they actually develop out the system, but I imagine you may not be invulnerable, and maybe a bounty hunter will be allowed to go on your property and extract you from it. Maybe you will be allowed to defend your property. Who knows? That's a pretty big edge case that they'll have to figure out themselves.
Real implications,
but the base won't be destroyed.
In addition to relying upon the system security, do you want to put your own sensors there so that you're alerted when someone else does something that you don't like on that area of land? So if somebody starts mining, you'll basically be notified, and then you and potentially your org mates can head out there and basically push them off. You may...
I do think that will maintain, though. I think we'll get like some sort of a notification if maybe you place some sort of like a beacon system on your land claim to let you know that somebody's like come and started, they're on it at the very least.
hire mercenaries to basically periodically patrol your land with a higher level of frequency than what the normal, the normal UE security forces would do. Basically, the equivalent of hiring your own personal security to, to keep watch, of your valuables. And I'm really just touching the surface here. I mean, another thing is this makes the point that you don't.
It's also an incredibly funny concept that, maybe some really, maybe we get Eve. But I'm gonna, doubt big time on that when it comes to these locations. Maybe we end up getting Eve, but I don't think we will necessarily. I think we'll be a little bit smaller scale. But I mean Eve in the sense of you are in control of this area of space, and your company is, it sounded to me like Eve was a full-time job for people, right? You had a shift that you had to defend this. This location, right? And if anybody attacked it, everybody's got to come online and defend it. It sounds like they're kind of mixing it a little bit, but my guess is we're going to be a lot more Daisy and Rust, where you're going to spend some time building an outpost in nullsec and extracting as much as you can and storing as much as you can, but when it gets raided, it's gone. And I think that that's probably going to be more what we end up with, is a little bit more of the when things are rated. Oh well, guess we'll try again. I don't think we're going to be like placing down these massive, intentionally not temporary. Like I think every base that we'll place in nullsec is like you're not going to invest too much into it because your intention isn't to keep it there forever because you're assuming it's going to get raided. Right? So I'm assuming it's going to be a little bit more like Rust. It would be insane if it wasn't. And maybe, like we heard at the end of this year's discussion about it, is space stations will be maybe a little bit different on that if they do decide to do space stations, which it sounds like now it's like a thing that they want to investigate, but we'll see.
Necessarily have to do the full end-to-end cycle in order to take advantage of this. You could, for example,
this is sick though,
buy land or discover land and then just flip the land after you verify that it's got this, as opposed to you necessarily exploiting, mining, pulling up all of that material, which is a very particular type of gameplay that some people will love, but for other people, the discovery aspect or the security aspect, or on and on. If you have an interest in only one section of these areas, then you can still contribute to the overall equation. If you want to basically handle everything yourself, you can also do that.
Okay. So solely towards the Pioneer.
I don't know why it's doing that.
And what I'm going to talk about is preparation. So first thing that you're going to do is you're going to need to do collect materials and add-ons from different stores. So you'll get materials from TDDs or refineries, and you'll be able to pick up some of the add-ons like Tony was talking about, remote sensors or extractors, solar panels, moisture extractors, geothermal pumps, landing pads, turrets, that kind of stuff. Now, what is very important to understand is, if any of you have ever done home projects, know what you're building so that you don't do 5 trips to Hornbach to build something. So if you know what you're building and then you know the resources that you'll save yourself multiple trips, or it will be one of those things where you'll need to have these resources brought to you. So what do you want from your outpost? What's your gameplay intent? Do you want to be a moisture farmer and live and respawn there and basically look out over this beautiful beach, or do you want it to be like a revenue generator? So basically, you'll swoop in, you'll watch over it, you'll check in, make sure everything's running smoothly.
Guys, Star Wars. He mentioned Star Wars.
So with this, we've got investment.
Very exciting.
Not only from a resource and basically game money standpoint, at time to build. Not as fast as Paul's videos. So the other thing is, depending on the size of it, that will increase the build time the higher you go. Now, once it's actually placed, you're going to want to upkeep it. depending on if you put something in Earth's atmosphere versus the Mars's atmosphere versus Venus. Well, those are all different climates. And so the wear and tear and just kind of the usual stuff that we're doing with the ships.
Okay.
And as far as stuff breaking down, so on and so forth, this will be the same.
It's interesting. That was kind of not part of the discussion this year, really, at all. It was more about the customization of it for yourself, right?
So configuring. Now, the idea
like
would be
that
that
idea.
you're working the architect station, you're choosing the exterior layout of it, and then from there, you'll move into the interior rooms. So some of the different interior options: habitation, armory, storage, med station, mining, refining,
Still pretty much
hydroponics.
sticking to this from what we saw at the demo as well.
And so with this, depending on what you're doing, each one of them is going to require a different amount of power. And then that starts going into some of the add-ons. So if you're mining or if you're doing something that's very, very power intensive, growing things, so on and so forth, then you're going to
They seem
need
to be sticking
run
to this.
extra power in there. And with the
Which makes
add-ons,
sense.
just like with
Basic.
our ships, if you think of our ships as the base hull, and then you have your gimbals, you have your mounts, and then you're attaching weapons, you're attaching ordnance, you're attaching utility items. It's the same idea.
You know, none of this is like game changing or, things that we haven't seen before, right? You got your different modules that do different things. Well, no crafting. This was before this was back in the day when they said there would be no crafting in Star Citizen. This was kind of the communication at the time, that this was the only crafting you were ever going to do.
Here, it's basically you have your base structure, and then you have these item ports that Chris always talks about.
That tone has
will
changed
feed
completely.
into the ore extractors, and that's how we generate the power. So here are just
Who
some of the
said that?
internal
I
shots.
mean, go back to like really, really, really old Chris Roberts' like initial talks about Star Citizen. He said there would be literally no MMO crafting or something.
I think you guys have seen some of these already. I like the salad spinner, hydroponics, different mining ideas, storage. So one of the
Were these in game at the time? Because they've made these basically to a T. Was this like new and like things people never saw? Yeah, this is 6 years ago. Were these things somebody never saw before?
important things is basically if you're growing
These are concept. They
plants, or if
they
you're
stuck to
basically
this completely.
dealing with any sort of bare form resources that will feed into our ecological system, then what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're actually storing these items, and so that you're not just mining once and then basically having to shut down because you don't have any more space. Drug lab. So in case you want to
yeah, these were built
do a little
out.
Breaking Bad. Then idea about research, and this would be maybe you're
This
close to
changed
the
a little,
sun or
maybe?
something like that, and you want to research some solar flares or those types of things. Med station. So the main thing for us has always been a sandbox, and making sure that you have the freedom to focus on the gameplay that you find interesting.
Yes.
And so
Can I point that out right now? That Sandbox is focusing on the gameplay that you find interesting. That people that argue that Star Citizen is a sandbox can do whatever they want whenever they want, and using that as an excuse every time I argue that there should be gameplay in the game. That's not even how the lead of the PU thinks about Sandbox. So can we really stop these stupid arguments? That the argument is legitimately, strictly just this Sandbox is being able to choose the gameplay you want and go in the direction you want. If you want to do nothing, you could do that too. But the general idea around Sandbox is like, I want to be a hauler, I can go be a hauler. I want to be security, I can go be security. Well, they have to make the gameplay to make that stuff fun.
what we wanted to talk about was just some of the ecosystems that we feel
Oh, shit,
these
Burks is
things
here.
help support and help build. You've got
What's
the
up, dude?
haulers and traders that would be dealing with things that would come in, and if you're mining or if you're growing plants, well, these are going to take these to manufacturing or processing centers. Tony mentioned the security and the needing to actually protect your things, because I can guarantee you, if
Save
you're
us,
making
Bergs.
money, people are going to want to take it from you. Exploration, John mentioned this about going and finding these plots of land and everything like that. Then there's repair, obviously mining,
Why does it keep skipping?
farming, and the refining stuff. So that is our panel.
All right. Do they do Q&A? Oh, they do.
Before Chris.
Oh yeah, we actually finished.
We have time for a few questions.
Oh, shit. In the
not
meantime,
normal
I'll look
length,
for the,
just because we need a little bit of prep time before Chris gives his large presentation.
The other thing is that I think some of us will be talking to Jared afterwards, and
Absolutely.
then
Hey, Destination Adventure, is that where they show the base building, guys?
the other thing is that some of us will also make sure that we're out by any extra questions that we need to answer.
Would that be the Intel Saber Raven?
Yes, it would be.
Cool. So it's up on
All
YouTube?
right, so where's my mics in the audience
I'll
for
grab
questions?
it after this.
Good show of hands.
Materials required
Stop skipping. I'm not.
quite small for such a big ship. Is it possible to land a freelancer or something, or do you have to ask for like 200 ships to bring you one crate after another?
Good
So
question.
it fits 40 by 40 meters. So there's quite a large, it looks quite small.
Scuffed
on it,
internet, I think.
But 40 by 40 meters is a lot of space. That's what we deem safe. You can, like with all things cargo, you can push it and get a little bit more on there. But 40 by 40 is the designated area. So there's a lot of cargo options in there. And it is right next to the cargo bay. It slides next to it, so you wheel it out, put it in the cargo bay, and back in again.
What the fuck?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
What was that?
Another question? Over on this side.
Will the outpost be salvageable?
I
I
want them to
spelled
be.
it wrong.
I want to as well.
Well, to me, it's basically like cleaning up extra stuff. So
Ooh, will outposts be salvageable? When we destroy them, I think so.
if somebody wants to burn it, and then you go in and you salvage it,
Yeah.
I think that should be doable.
Yeah, why not?
And so sorry, I know there's a lot of hands, but our last one.
Will you be able to spawn at the med stations?
That's the goal, yeah.
Thanks.
Okay,
Oh my god. What was this guy's name? This was one of the original Star Citizen streamers way back in the day. Absolute Giga Chad. He was so cool. I cannot remember his name. Oh my god. Only the OGs are going to remember him. Like OGs. All right, and then this was Destination Adventure. And we're just going to watch the video. When's the video? Where we all get excited. There it is. Right here. Right? Just so we can see sort of the change. But we'll only look at it from the visual concept. We're not going to go through the entire thing again. I've already reacted to that, just to get an idea of what's changed from what they said. And that's all. Right? Land claim site, everybody loses their mind. Okay. This is the biggest difference. Is obviously they're not just going to appear out of nowhere. But if we look at the shape of everything and the height and all these things, are these really going to fit in a Pioneer? Are we going to be making these with only a Pioneer? How's all this going to work? It just feels like they're going 3D printing. I wonder if we're going to be able to remove trees. Good question. Like, I think we're going to have base building beams. Like, we're going to laser 3D print, but using a UI of some kind that, you know, we just have to have the commodities on the ship. But again, this was a big, big difference, is that the focus was what was on the surface. Now it's the focus of what is below the surface. Yep, that is really satisfactory. It's insane. Maybe the Pioneer has to land and it's the 3D printer itself. Wait until this next module that they show, and that's what makes it feel like maybe not. I don't think it's landing anymore. Because this is so tall, it's cutting out of the screen. So I really don't think it's going to be landing. I think we're going to be hovering. And there's just going to be, you know, a UI, and it has to be simplified from what they showed. So what they showed in the demo in 2017 was you were going to build these modules on your ship, and your ship was literally going to place them down. Do we really think that that's going to be a thing here? It seems incredibly overcomplicated. And I just want to pose the question to you guys. Would you be upset if that was the case? I personally wouldn't be. I'm not a big beam citizen person. But in reality, how do we get this system without it being a little bit more simple, right? And I think that they're kind of setting the tone here of it was hollow, and now it's not. And there's going to be some animations and maybe some drones flying around. There's going to be some hand-wavium that turns that hollow view into reality, and they'll make that look cool and make that fun, maybe, but I can't see the original concept existing. It's just too crazy. And I mean, I'm perfectly fine with that. No planks and nails? Well, the planks and nails you're going to have on your ship, right? But I think everything is going to be printed. Planks and nails that's for Daisy. Good question about the trees, though. Are we going to be able to clear out an area? Because everything's perfectly placed here around stuff. Maybe that's something the Pioneer can do. Clear out a little plot of land for you. Build your home in the verse. All right, so, I mean, that's it. So, like, we looked at the original concept. We already heard them talk about the new concept on a previous React, but pretty cool going back in time. I think a lot of the things that Todd Pappy said are realistic. I think some of the things that Tony Z is saying are trying to cover all the edge case bases, but it's really hard to say how we will interact with NPCs with these. And that's really what Tony's focus was. So, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think, and we'll see how this all comes out in the next year or so. All right?